Welcome to Ohio Home Inspector Network's Inspector Talk. I'm your host, James Jones, and today I am excited to have Mandy Harless, the managing partner of Lifeo Real Estate, joining us with over 33 years of experience in the residential real estate industry. Mandy has a wealth of knowledge representing buyers, coaching realtors, while guiding sellers and buyers through the market. Her insight and expertise make her a valuable voice in today's discussion. Welcome, Mandy.
Well, thank you so much for having me, James. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Absolutely. I have some questions for you. We've been doing some new construction inspections together. I really enjoy that part of the industry. Can you discuss the challenges home inspectors face when builders don't allow access, and how does that impact consumer protection for your buyers?
So really good and important topic. I've certainly, as a realtor, we've certainly, worked on a lot of new construction over the years, and probably the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen more of a pushback from some of the local builders having restrictions or rules surrounding our access or our ability to have a third-party home inspection. So it's an important topic, and I think it really does speak to consumer protection. When we're talking about a home purchase, it's likely in a lot of people's case the single largest purchase they're ever going to make. And some of the longest list of repair issues that I've ever seen on an inspection request have been in new construction. And that might surprise people, but the reality is when you're building and buying a brand new house, the expectation, although it's being built by human hands, it's going to be as close to perfection as one could get. And I think the misnomer that a lot of people think is that the city or the township or the area where the house is being built, the city is going to send out, or the township's going to send out people to inspect the property and make sure that it meets building code, but a lot of things get missed in that process. And so again, I think it's an important consumer protection. It's one that every single client that I work with, I recommend it. Not everybody takes advantage of it, but I think it's an important thing for consumers to do, is to have that property inspected by a third party who has no skin in the game, paying for an objective third-party opinion. And it's really shocking how many times I have seen building code violations and just things that weren't done properly, that had we not had that third-party inspection done, we probably would have seen some pretty significant structural and other issues come quickly on that new build home.
Absolutely, absolutely. With the recent changes that the entire industry has been shook up by regarding the buyer brokers protection agency agreement, what implications do property inspectors might see, or how will we see the industry change for us as a whole?
That's interesting. And I hadn't thought a lot about it over the last 4 or 5 years as this class action lawsuit has been going on, and there's been discussion about the changes that really just implemented officially August 17th, so just a couple days ago. In my opinion, it could be very much a rollback of our industry 20 years. I mean, as you said, as you introduced me, I've been a realtor. This is actually my 36th year. And when I came into the industry, every client, every realtor represented the seller, whether they worked directly with the seller or worked with a buyer. And only after about 10 or 15 years of work did we have buyer broker agency, and that separation of each party having representation. What didn't happen when that happened originally was there wasn't a separation of who paid that fee. And so this class action lawsuit and the changes that are happening really make it clear who that realtor represents and who's responsible for paying them. And as it relates to home inspections, there are going to be buyers who are going to make a decision not to be represented. And I really am concerned about that. I'm fearful for what that means, because many buyers who need representation and who don't understand or don't really understand the process, or haven't purchased a home, either have never done it or haven't done it in a long time, they don't know what they don't know. And to make a declaration as a buyer buying a house that they don't need representation, they don't understand the full ramifications of that. And some of that spills over to you as a home inspector, because obviously your job is to inspect the property, but it's not to give them advice on what to do about the findings or how to negotiate with the seller to address those. And I fear that if you haven't seen it already, that you're going to get those phone calls from buyers who, hey, you've done this inspection for me. Now, how do I get the seller to fix these things? And that's outside of your scope of licensing or expertise to guide them on that.
That's excellent. That's an excellent answer to the question, and we're seeing so much more unrepresented buyers. It's frustrating to see not the proper guidance implemented. From your experience, how valuable are inspections in new construction homes? What specific issues have you encountered that can really bring to light that importance of the additional oversight?
Well, I think I would broaden that answer to say every property, whether it's a new build or not, the importance of a buyer being fully aware of what they're buying. Yes, there are some legal requirements the seller has to disclose what they know about a property, but it's up to you as a buyer, as a consumer, to know what it is you're buying. And so to have a thorough third-party inspection done so that you go in eyes wide open, here's what I'm buying. And again, as I've already said, in new construction, I've seen the longest list of repair items on those properties because you expect them to be brand new. You expect it to be as close to perfection as possible. And it's interesting some of the pushback and the debate you get from a builder when you bring them a list of, I want these items to be addressed. I mean, I've seen things as egregious as structural items that they wanted to move past or they wanted to ignore. And when you bring them an inspection report and you point it out, there can be really a tussle about making them address those items, and they're quick to hide behind, well, the city or the county or the township already inspected and cleared it, but that doesn't change the fact that it may not be correct. And that's why it's so critically important. I really wanted to be sure today to point this out. Every home inspector is not the same. And I think that's really important for realtors to know and for consumers to know. We've made a lot of progress. There was a long time that home inspectors didn't have to be licensed. Anybody, your Uncle Joe could become a home inspector and the state didn't have any oversight on that. So we've made progress there. But just because you've become a licensed home inspector doesn't mean you're necessarily qualified to do a thorough new build home inspection and do it in the multiple phases and really have the knowledge and the working understanding of the building codes to really, when you're looking at that house under construction, to know whether in fact it's compliant with those local building codes.
Well, finally, from your perspective as a seasoned real estate professional, what is the importance of the property inspection, the buying process, especially when it comes to new construction? I mean, what different approach do you, from a regular single family home that you're going into with a buyer that's purchasing an existing home? What is that different approach? How long does it take? Is it something that sometimes new builds can take a year
Yeah. Yeah.
for the process to come to fruition at the very end? So what's that approach? Can you help us see that?
Absolutely. So the first thing I'll say to any buyer that I'm working with is there is no better money you will ever spend in the home buying process than to hire and pay for a third-party home inspection, because you want to know exactly what you're getting. Although there are some required disclosures on a seller, it's still let the buyer beware what you're buying. And so I've seen many cases where the state disclosure form has been completed by a seller and they say, no, I have no knowledge of water in the basement, and I'm literally standing in a pool of water in the basement. And so although there's some legal ramifications to that, it doesn't change the fact that you as a buyer need to know exactly what you're getting. So when we're doing it on an existing home, we're walking into finished walls and ceilings and everything is complete, and so your ability to see a defect and understand what's causing it, we certainly can speculate a variety of different things, but it's much different when you're seeing a house under construction. And so typically in a home inspection on an existing home, it's one visit, 3 or 4 hours, and you're getting that assessment based on what we could see of the physical structure. Whereas in new construction, it's a multiple stage process. To your point, sometimes houses are built over a 12-month period and they're exposed to all kinds of different weather conditions that could damage the structure and components that are exposed to the weather while it's under construction. So it can be a 3 or 4 phase process where we're having you or any home inspector back multiple times to look at the structure, to look at the foundation, which we know is critically important. If something goes wrong in that phase, there's a problem pretty quickly in a house, and you're going to see the evidence of that 6 months, 12 months, 2 years after the build, where if you had done a home inspection, you could have avoided some of those things. So we're doing inspections at foundation, we're doing inspections at framing, we're doing an inspection prior to drywall, and then a completion. So that's at least 4 phases that I can point out to you where you have the opportunity as a home buyer to have a seasoned and experienced professional, a home inspector, looking at those components to make sure they're all done correctly.
So, in your journey in being a real estate agent, do you have any final advice or anything that you could tell a buyer that would help them through that process? What are your thoughts?
Well, all builders are not the same. And so if as a buyer you are set on, I want something brand new, and I understand the desire to have something brand new that's built exactly the way you want it and with the material choices and the colors and everything that you want, I think that is certainly an option and a product that's available in our market. But I think it's important to understand that not every builder is the same. And I would submit to anybody that if you encounter a builder who objects to you having a real estate professional represent you, and by that I mean unwilling to include them or unwilling to fairly compensate them for a professional job, or a builder that would push back on you as a consumer hiring a third-party inspector and allowing them to visit the property, then that's a builder that you ought to be concerned about. Because if I'm going to spend as a consumer 400, 500, 600,000 or more, and we're seeing the cost of housing has escalated tremendously, if you're going to spend that much money, you ought to be able to, as a consumer, have people in your corner to protect you.
Absolutely. Mandy, excellent advice for buyers. If you're watching this podcast, I recommend you highly get a property inspection.
Yeah.
I recommend you're represented by a realtor when you're going through the process. Honestly do your due diligence throughout this time.
Mm-hmm.
James Jones, Ohio Home Inspector Network, Inspector Talk. Mandy, thank you for coming on today. I,
Absolutely, my pleasure.
I really appreciate it.